WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
And it's 90.7 the capstone, the student section. My name is Brady Grogan. I'm joined here with my co-host Connor Rolls. How you doing tonight, Connor?
I'm doing pretty swell, but that game last night, again, was really miserable.
So last night, the Washington Commanders took on the Chicago Bears with a final score of 12-7. Quite the exciting primetime game. Amazon's really getting their money worth on these Thursday night games so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're doing at this point. I mean, back-to-back horrible decisions by Amazon to put these games on.
Well, I don't think it's Amazon's choice. Amazon, I think, just decided that they would take Thursday night, and the NFL has just decided to give them just the worst games they see on the weekend so far this season.
At least Amazon's getting their money, but I don't even know what to say. I mean, these are the worst two night games I've ever seen.
It was pretty disappointing last night. I guess not disappointing because I went into the game knowing that I feel like all the talk before the game was everyone was betting the no touchdown score in the entire game. Everyone was kind of trolling the game, if you could say, because they just kind of knew that it was going to go this way.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the difference between this week and last week. I mean, we thought last week Broncos-Colts was going to be like an exciting game. So it was a really big letdown when the final score was 12-9. But this game, we knew it was going to be a bad game, and it was.
The quarterbacks combined for 26 completions in the entire game. So it feels like the NFL. I don't understand why they don't schedule good Thursday night football game, because it feels like Thursday night would be like a great night for viewership.
Exactly, it's the only thing on.
It's the only thing on Thursday nights. There's not really anything else going on for sports fans to watch. So why would you put the Commanders versus the Bears on this night?
Yeah, I mean, looking at next week's Thursday night football game, it's Saints-Cardinals, so that's a better one, but
mildly better. But both those teams have kind of underperformed to expectations this year still.
They have, but I'm pretty sure D-Hop is coming back for the Cardinals.
Is that D-Hop's first week back?
I think so, yes.
So that should be a better game in that sense.
Yeah.
But talking about receivers, I think we should kind of talk about the Bears and the weapons they have around Justin Fields.
Or the lack thereof.
And how much of the Bears' disappointing season so far is on Justin Fields, do you think?
So it's really hard to say right now because, yes, Justin Fields does not look great. I mean, his arm talent, it's a work in progress in his vision. He's very, raw. I remember last night there was a play when he scrambled in the red zone. There was a guy wide open on the other side of the field who could have walked in and scored the touchdown to win the game. But then again, you look at his receivers, you have Dante Pettis, Darnell Mooney as your two number one wide receivers, who is not good. Their O-line is terrible. Their running backs are, I might give them better than average, I would say. Their running back duo with David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. Mm-hmm. But also, their coaching staff is not good either, so I would put a little, I don't know if I should put 50% of the blame on Justin Fields, but I'm saying at least 35 to 40% is on him.
I think one of the big problems Justin Fields has right now he needs to learn is what happens when that first read isn't open. Because it feels like a lot of times when he's in the pocket, he looks at his first man, and if that man's not open, he just immediately switches to just running and trying to use his legs. And obviously, he is a great athlete, and he's able to make great plays with his legs. But you can't give up on the play that fast.
Yeah.
And just immediately panic and go into that mode.
Yeah, I remember there was a play that got him into the red zone where he scrambled for 40 yards, 30 yards, which was a great play. But other than that, I mean, he looks at that first read, and if it's not there, he takes off. So that's also a really big problem in his game.
I think that's an underrated development Lamar Jackson has made in the league, where initially when he came in, it was something's not open, I'm going to run right away. But I feel like we've seen him progress to the state where he kind of doesn't give up on the play, and he continues to look to try and make the play upfield, and then as a last resort tries to use his legs, which I feel like is something that Justin Fields could learn from.
Yeah, they also have really good coaches in Baltimore.
That is true.
So
they've built the whole system around him.
I don't know if they'll do that with Justin Fields. So it's definitely gonna take some time. I'm not off the train just yet because it's really early in his career with no help, but it's coming to a stop soon, and I might want to hop off.
I think part of it is coaching security. John Harbaugh in Baltimore kind of knew that he wasn't gonna they weren't gonna fire John Harbaugh, so you could kind of take this risk on Lamar Jackson and build the whole system because they had trust between the organization and the coach. But in this situation with the Bears, I feel like there isn't that as much.
Mhm.
So the coach is kind of just trying to plug in his system and not really build it around Fields.
Yeah, I think it is. I can definitely see that happening. But I mean, like so far this season, it looks like the head coach is not really giving his full trust into Justin. He's not throwing a lot of games. I mean, last game yesterday he only threw he completed 14 passes for 27 yards and 190 yards. But I mean, I don't know. It's just I feel like he's not getting the full reins. They want to run the ball more instead of just let him throw the ball. So that could be a problem with his progression. But
It's one of those things where I feel like we've seen in the Giants this year, Brian Daboll, he's not necessarily letting Daniel Jones do whatever he wants, but there's talent around him with like Saquon Barkley and a defense that's playing actually pretty well this season that they can kind of play that way. But it seems like with the Bears, there's not really that talent around Justin Fields where it's kind of like the only option is to ask Justin Fields to make plays, but they're not really doing that and giving him that trust.
yeah, I definitely can see that. But let's move on from talking about the Bears and let's talk about the winning team and Carson Wentz and the Commanders.
Did they really win? Was there any winner of this game, like in the metaphorical stance? Like,
Definitely not Carson Wentz.
it seems like both these teams should want to lose to get the higher draft position at the end of the season.
It looked like they did. But, I mean, Carson Wentz, 12 for 22 with only 99 yards. The most impressive thing he did all night was blocking Roquan Smith on the Brian Robinson touchdown.
It was a mean block.
It was a mean block.
You should consider switching the tight end, maybe.
I'll give him that.
Block. He laid that guy right out.
He's definitely not having... Well, actually, I take that back. He is having the year that we all thought he was.
It's the Commanders. I feel like this is going to be kind of the straw that breaks the back of like, hey, we need to find a young quarterback in the draft this season, because I feel like I think I've said this multiple weeks now, where it's like this idea of bringing in a new quarterback that's kind of iffy, and we'll see if we can make him work here. It just doesn't work very well. And I think that this Carson Wentz experiment is going to prove to the organization that like, hey, we need a young quarterback who we can kind of take a risk on and then kind of develop within our system and not a broken one.
Yeah, what's crazy is they have like a quote unquote guy they already have like the system learned around with Taylor Heineke, but he's just not playing.
They definitely, I was never on board with the Carson Wentz trade from the start,
Neither was I.
and it to me it made zero sense because it didn't push the needle for them at all. They weren't a quarterback away from like winning a ring. Carson Wentz isn't the quarterback.
He's not.
Who will bring you to the win. So in my mind, it's kind of like, why make this trade and just waste the season?
Yeah, I definitely like Taylor. I feel like Taylor Heineke is not that big of a downgrade from Carson Wentz, so I wouldn't see why they would make that trade.
And I feel like Taylor Heineke has more upside. I think at this point we've seen what Carson Wentz can do.
Yeah,
Since he had that great almost MVP season with the Eagles, but that Carson Wentz is long gone, and teams can't be hoping to kind of unlock that person anymore. It's just not there.
yeah. I don't know. After that Frank Reich year, I mean, that was the year people would thought that he would unlock him. You know, Frank Reich and Carson Wentz were really good friends when they were on the Eagles, and everyone expected Frank Reich to be like, okay, Carson, let's do what you wanted to do that MVP year. But after that 1 year he was there, Frank Reich lost all hope, and he was shipped out of there.
That should have been just the giant red flag to the
Exactly.
Commanders.
I don't know why
do not
anybody would
trade
do
for
that.
this player. Like he's just not very good. He's just not very good at the game of football, and it is a little bit sad to see someone who we know could be good, and then kind of injury and the psyche of the player kind of derails them. But you kind of have to come to terms with that.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that Carson Wentz trade, because I heard there was a rumor that Dan Snyder was the reason they traded for Carson Wentz. And I mean, you look at the fans, everyone wants him to sell the team.
Dan Snyder has been in quite the controversy recently, also saying he has dirt on every single owner in the NFL.
So I really don't know. I mean, Ron Rivera, I mean, he was asked, I don't know if I agree with this. He was asked, what's the difference between the Commanders and the rest of the team in the NFC East? And he said quarterback, which, I mean, the quarterback, yes, he's not been playing great recently, but he also is number 5 in the NFL in passing yards. And the defense does not look good at all. Their weapons aren't producing, and their O-line looks terrible. So I don't know if you can just blame only the quarterback.
You definitely can't blame just the quarterback, because also The Cowboys 4-0 with Cooper Rush. The Giants, I mean, everyone gave up on Daniel Jones. No one coming into the season, no one thought Daniel Jones was obviously better than Carson Wentz. Like they were kind of on like the same pedestal coming into this year. And what's the difference? The coach and Brian Daboll is obviously putting Daniel Jones in more situations where he can succeed. And Ron Rivera isn't really doing that for Carson Wentz. And then the defense, the Commanders have given up, I think it's like 40 more points to end teams than anyone else in the division. So it's like you can't just blame Carson Wentz. This team as a whole just isn't very good.
Yeah, and I remember, what was it? A couple weeks ago, I said the Commanders will be second in the NFC East. And boy, was I mistaken. That was a horrible take. They are definitely going to be last, and their weapons just aren't producing.
I mean, there's not really weapons to produce on that team. It's just the team as a whole. I feel like the roster isn't built very strongly. To me, it's a reset year. You need to find a quarterback in the draft this year to build forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. Talking about weapons, I mean, Antonio Gibson, he was the hot option at running back in 2020. Last year he had a great year.
He was like the waiver wire pickup.
Yeah, he was
that
like,
won you your lead if you had him.
He was the guy, and no one thought he was going anywhere. And he has not made any improvements throughout these couple of years. And you see Brian Robinson, who happens to get shot twice in the leg 2 months ago, and he comes back and he's a starting running back just like that. I think that tells you a lot about Antonio Gibson and the way he is performing inside that locker room or just on the field.
To me, I wasn't surprised at all that Gibson kind of lost his role. I remember there was reports coming in during their preseason stuff that he was running reps with the punting group. So I wasn't surprised to see him move back. It's one of those like strange things to see because you're not really sure exactly like what happened.
Yeah,
because I feel like we don't see a lot what happens in the preseason. We don't get to hear the coaches say specifically like what makes this guy better than that guy. So it is kind of just like strange to see this guy who literally won people their fantasy football leagues and was looked like a good young running back who could get better, just now totally out of the rotation.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you think he'll be traded by the end of the year, or do you think he'll just be a backup?
If I had to guess, I'd say he's just like a backup. I'm not sure there's going to be much trade value for that. I feel like a lot. I don't feel like you see trades for running backs a lot in like mid-season.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally like you trade for like a wide. Like I feel like your running back, because normally your O-line is more important to your running game than the actual running back in the NFL. So I feel like we're not going to see a lot of actual demand for Antonio Gibson where it's like worth them trading him.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think he will most likely be traded because you look at Antonio Gibson and what he brings to the table. He was a high-level receiving back, but J.D. McKissic's a better receiving back than him.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason they put him on the field is because he's a better running back than J.D. McKissic, but he loses his job to Brian Robinson. So I feel like he's not going to see much playing time on the field. So I think there might be a little like division in the locker room, and I don't want to say he's going to create something, but I feel like there's a possibility where if the Commanders can get something for Antonio Gibson, they're going to shop him immediately.
That's true. I don't think there'll be something in the locker room because I feel like if there were going to be something, it would have already happened.
Yeah.
Considering you don't run reps with the punting unit and not understand where your role is coming into the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like that was already already understood what was kind of going to happen moving forward. So I feel like it would have already happened. That's kind of where I stand. And we're going to have to take a quick break. This has been 90.7 The Capsule. We'll be right back after a short break.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
We are back at 90.7 The Capsule in the student section. This is Brady and joined by Connor. And we're going to mix up a little bit moving on from Thursday night and go into this weekend and kind of talk about our locks and upsets for the weekend. Connor, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Let's talk about my lock first. And I think it's going to be pretty obvious. I got Vikings over Dolphins. I mean, no Tua, no Teddy, and the Dolphins got destroyed by the Jets of all teams. So I think I'm pretty safe choosing the Vikings over the Dolphins without a starting quarterback.
I can see that happening for sure. I mean, I think The Dolphins definitely are missing Tua. He was having a great season before.
He was.
So it is kind of sad to see. But the Vikings, I think, are on like a 4-game win streak or a 3-game win streak now coming into this game.
Yeah, they haven't lost a game since they lost the game to the Eagles. So I think it's going to be I think the Vikings, I don't want to say they will roll over the Dolphins, but it's going to be bad.
I can see that. That was actually, I had the same exact lock. I really liked that game. I thought the Vikings have been playing well recently. It's not a primetime game, so I feel like I can trust Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, Kirk might be able to play like a quarterback.
I can trust Kirk Cousins in that game. And yeah, the Dolphins just, it's hard when your quarterback doesn't play. I feel like, yeah, I mean, that's all you can really say. It's hard when your starting quarterback isn't there.
I mean, let's just talk about last week. I mean, they lost 40-17 against the Jets, and the Vikings are 4-1. So I think it's pretty safe to choose the Vikings with Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and their defense has been playing pretty good this year. So let's talk about my upset.
What you got?
Falcons over 49ers.
I'm going to need you to elaborate.
Well, last week I picked the Giants over the Packers as
Which
my upset.
actually turned up being such a genius pick. I was sitting there on Sunday watching it. I was like, there's no way Connor got that right. Like, how did he see this coming?
So I feel like I'm kind of a psychic when it comes to upsets and locks. Not picking division winners. But I got Falcons over 49ers. I mean, Jimmy G is their quarterback, so you can never really trust him fully as their quarterback. I mean, their weapons, Debo's looked good. Their O-lines looked good. George Kittle, he's been okay since coming back from injury. Brandon Ayuk looks like he can do something. That defense is looking like some of the top in the NFL. But the Falcons, man, they put up good games against everybody that I've seen so far. Marcus Mariota, if he can find a way to not turn the ball over, they will put up some points.
I mean, they almost beat the Buccaneers. There was that big controversy with the roughing the passer.
That shouldn't have been a call.
It obviously should have been, and it could have put the Falcons in a situation where they could have won that game. So they were competing with a very high-level team last week.
Yeah, I mean, we can just look at some of their games so far. They barely lost to the Saints. They barely lost to the Rams. They beat the Seahawks. They beat the Browns. And they barely lost to the Buccaneers.
That's 5 games they've been in. I didn't realize it was like there's been competitive games each week.
Yeah, I mean, AJ Terrell is looking like that lockdown corner. I mean, Grady Jarrett is looking amazing. I think they have a real shot of pulling off this upset. So that's where my head's...
Talking me into it a little bit. I'm liking it more after you kind of elaborated, for sure. For my upset, I'm going with the team I've been high on every single week. The Chiefs over the Bills. The Bills are favored in this game. The game it's a home game for the Chiefs. And I'm pretty sure there's some stat that this is like the first time in like the Patrick Mahomes era he hasn't been favored at home. Which I think
that's crazy.
It is kind of crazy to think about. But I think the Chiefs got this game. I'm a big believer in Patrick Mahomes. I think he just finds ways to win games. It's coming off like an iffy game with the Raiders, which was way closer than it probably should have been. So I think that they'll kind of bounce back a little bit and then make a statement against the Bills and win this game.
Yeah, so I would like picking the Chiefs over a lot of people I'm down with because, it's Patrick Mahomes. He looks amazing. Travis Kelce, 4 touchdowns against the Raiders. Amazing. Their defense looks pretty good. But the Bills, Josh Allen,
I'm rocking with it.
Hey, I mean, if it happens, that's going to be crazy.
It's just, I mean, I think it is crazy this is the first time Patrick Mahomes hasn't been favored at home. I think him at home is just such a difference because that Chiefs crowd, it really is like probably like the loudest crowd in the NFL. It's one of them.
It's a loud crowd. But
it's one of the loudest crowds in the NFL, and that is a big difference maker in these games.
Yeah, I don't know about one of the loudest. I mean, you got the 12th man in the Seahawks.
That crowd ain't gonna be as loud this year as it's been though.
It might not be, but we got to give it. Philly fans are different. Lincoln Financial Field is a very hostile environment to play in. I mean, Saints fans in the Superdome, domes are a lot harder to play in.
That is true.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong. Their crowd, it's pretty rowdy, but I'm not going to say it's the best.
All right. So, now we are officially a third of the way through the NFL season so far this year. So I feel like it's time to get a little ahead of ourselves, as all sports fans loves to do, and give out some awards that we have seen for the NFL season
Mid-season
so far.
award time.
We love to get ahead of ourselves when watching sports and make definitive statements way too soon. So, let's talk about the first award that the NFL likes to give out, the MVP award. Connor, who you got?
No surprise here, but I am going Jalen Hurts. I mean, you just look at the season he's having. He already has 1,359 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but both of them weren't really his fault. Actually, take that back. The one against the Jaguars, he looked down. I think it was A.J. Brown, heavy. So I will give him that. But the second one was off his running back's hands, which was a fluke. But, I mean, he's putting up touchdowns on the ground, the air. He's holding on to the ball, which is amazing. I mean, let's see his rushing. Do I have his rushing stats pulled up? I can't find it, but I know he has
one of the better rushing quarterbacks.
Yes, he is
so far.
I don't know if he has the most rushing touchdowns. I don't know if that's Lamar or like Daniel Jones or something like that.
He's up there for sure.
He's definitely top 3 though. Mm-hmm. So, and he also is leading his team to an undefeated 5-0 record.
I feel like the 5-0 record is kind of the most convincing factor in my mind, at least. He's been 5-0 so far, which I feel like being the only undefeated team. I feel like is a pretty convincing.
Yeah,
it's pretty convincing. I wanted to go with Jalen Hurts. I really did, but I feel like we kind of got to give him a little bit where like the team around him is very stacked. He basically has 2-1 wide receivers and one of the best defenses behind him. So I decided to go a different route. I wanted to give it to Patrick Mahomes so far. Everyone was talking about how the loss of Tyreek Hill would cause their offense to just kind of fall apart and it would not be as good. And statistically, so far this season, it's been the same offense. It's acted like the Tyreek Hill, him leaving, it really didn't change much for the Chiefs. So that's why I feel like Patrick Mahomes is kind of silencing the haters a little bit.
Okay.
He's not really allowing that to like get in his head a little bit because I feel like the offense was always Patrick Mahomes. People kind of overvalued how much of it was built around Tyreek Hill.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he's not in MVP talks right now, but I mean, you saying that he's
I like that
a lot
narrative. I feel like a lot of people before the season were disrespecting the Chiefs a little bit and talking about how like they weren't going to be this top team that they've been, which to me made 0 sense.
Yeah, narratives do matter a lot in these awards, and that's probably one of the biggest narratives, if not the biggest so far. So I could definitely see that happening.
So then the next award that they give out is the Offensive Player of the Year. Who you got so far?
So far, he's had great weeks and he's had 2 rough weeks, but I'm going Justin Jefferson. I mean, you just look at some of the stats he's putting up. Let me pull it up real quick. But that first game against the Packers, he put up almost 200 yards receiving, which was crazy.
That was one of the most dominant like receiver games that you see. Like they're just throwing him, he's like wide open.
Yeah, I mean, Jair Alexander was like, "Hey, let me guard him," and then he gets cooked right after. So I don't know if he wanted to stay on him like that. But first game, he put up 184 yards. Then he had a doozy his next 2 games against the Eagles in Detroit with 48 yards and 14. And in the next 2 games against the Saints, he put up 147 yards. And against the Bears, he put up 154 yards. He's just stacking those games together. And I think he can really have a huge receiving season. And I think he will win Offensive Player of the Year. I
like that pick for sure. I went different. I went with Saquon Barkley so far this season. I feel like Saquon has really been like the heart of the Giants offense this season. Like I feel like if you had to pick like the best player, it's like really him. And the team is 4-1 so far this season. Mm-hmm. And the offense has actually looked way better than it has in the past. So I feel like the fact that Saquon he's basically leading an offense and they're 4-1, I feel like that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the thing with Saquon is I don't want to give him the Offensive Player of the Year only because it's such a big award with all the different positions, but I think he will get another award this year.
There's the fact that there's a running back who's basically leading an offense. I feel like was enough of a narrative in my mind, to give him that award. So then, Defensive Player of the Year,
I have Darius Big Play Slay.
Big Play Slay. I like that nickname.
So the reason I picked him was because of the teams he's played so far. he's shut down those number one wide receivers. You look at the Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a very big game, but he wasn't on him. He was on, I'm pretty sure it was on Reynolds, maybe. And Reynolds was shut down. I didn't hear from him the entire game.
Reynolds also is not nearly the receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown is. So I feel like shutting down.
Amon-Ra St. Brown was in the slot most of the game, so he was going against Avonte Maddox. But you look at the next week against the Vikings.
That is a much more convincing argument right there.
Yes.
You should have led with that one.
I should have, but I'm just going week by week. My pick offensive player of the year had, I think it was 1 catch for 7 yards against Darius Slay when he was matched up against him with 2 interceptions. He had more picks than Justin Jefferson had catches against him. So that's a huge play. Let's see. Who do we play week 3? Because I know he played the Commanders. I'm pretty sure. I mean, okay.
We've been talking about the Commanders a lot tonight. Is shutting down the Commanders offense really that big of a deal?
Well, I mean, it was at that time, but he covered Terry McLaurin, and he did not have a big game while on him. I think he did exit the game with an injury. So when he left, Terry McLaurin he put up 100 yards, but before that, it was crazy. I mean, next game against Jacksonville, he played against Christian Kirk, who has been a very underrated pickup and had a great year. He didn't have his first catch until the 4th quarter. So
there definitely is an argument there. There definitely is an argument. I feel like I had to go a different way. I went with Micah Parsons so far this year.
That's also a really good pick.
The Cowboys defense yet to give up 20 points. Micah Parsons, he's kind of this do-it-all defender. They're kind of putting him everywhere. He's like rushing the quarterback. He's setting up in like the middle of the field. He kind of does it all for them. He's got this high motor where he's just constantly just going at his all.
Relentless.
And I feel like this Cowboys defense it surprised me at least this year.
It definitely surprised me.
I definitely didn't see this coming. And just like what I said, the fact that they haven't given up 20 plus points and Micah Parsons is the heart of this defense was convincing enough for me to say that he's been the best defensive player so far.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
So this award, it's a little, I would say underwhelming so far this year. The offensive rookie of the year. I feel like there hasn't really been a standout like there normally is.
Yeah. So my offensive rookie of the year, it's gonna be Chris Olave. I mean, you just look at some.
You
of the
can hear the
games.
hesitation in your voice when you said that. It just shows how kind of like the rookies have been this year, the offensive rookies at least. There's been a lot of good defenders, I feel like.
Yeah, the rookies, they're cool, I guess you could say. I mean, you look at some of the games he's having. I mean, one game he put up 147 yards. Hey, that's yes. And then 54, 67, 80, and 41. So you could say he's consistent, but not a great year for offensive rookie so far.
I went with Breece Hall for the Jets. I feel like his production, well, these last 2 weeks it's ramped up a little bit. So where he's at right now, it's not very convincing. But I feel like by the end of the year, Breece Hall will kind of have he'll have a resume that I feel like looks more like how an offensive rookie of the year should. Because I think the last 2 weeks he's been like 15 plus carries for the Jets. So I feel like by the end of the year he'll have that argument. But just like right now, it's kind of meh.
Actually, never mind. A name popped in my head.
Who'd you remember?
Dameon Pierce, the running back for the Houston Texans. Scratch a whole Chris Olave department. He's mid. I'm going Dameon Pierce. I mean, he's 7th. He's 5th in the league with rushing yards as a rookie. 7th in attempts. He's tied 5th with 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's already better than Chris Olave.
Very true.
So, Dameon Pierce is my offensive rookie of the year.
That's a more... I like that argument. Just for me, I kind of went with Breece because I feel like there's more upside with Breece. I feel like the season he's going to get better as a whole, and that's kind of why I went that way. So then for defensive rookie of the year, I went with another Jets player. I really like the draft, Sauce Gardner.
Okay.
Cornerback. He's been locked up this year so far. I really love what I see from him. I feel like he's got this confidence where he just like believes himself to go up against anyone, and I really love just the presence he has on the field.
Yeah, that's a really great pick. I mean, I can't really say anything about that. Has he allowed a touchdown yet so far?
It was technically his fault. They're kind of in like a fake zone, and he handed off a receiver, and the other guy didn't kind of cover and left one, but not really his fault.
So we're still going to say he has not allowed a touchdown his entire football career. But my pick is the rookie out of Utah, the linebacker Devin Lloyd for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Jacksonville's had a really underrated year this year, especially on the defensive side. And he's their starting linebacker. He's already has 2 picks. He has 26 tackles. I mean, he's the quarterback of that defense, and he's really holding his own as a rookie. So I would give it to him as of right now.
Coach of the year, who you eyeing so far? You going back home?
There's no way I can't say Brian Dable. I mean,
I thought you were gonna go with
Sirianni.
Sirianni. That's why I thought
I would, but there's too many Eagles on my list right now. But I gotta go Dable. I mean, no one thought they were gonna come in and do anything. Mm-hmm. He comes in. Daniel Jones is looking like he's about to lose his job. Saquon was iffy. They come in. They're 4-1 right now with the chance at the division, and everyone looks like they're behind Dable, and he's just doing his thing right now.
He is.
That team looks really impressive so far.
I'm staying in the same division. I'm going with Mike McCarthy, mainly because I feel like turning around that defense is really impressive to me, because I think that is a really good defense now, and the fact that the whole system has turned it around. He's 4-0 after his quarterback got hurt, which I feel like shows. It shows that he's putting his team in situations so they can succeed. After last season, I wanted the Cowboys to fire him. I did, but I really like what I've seen from them so far.
You can't see my face right now, but I am disagreeing heavily right now.
I know, and I feel like it's kind of. I really do think that their defense is legit.
I think you can't give any credit to Mike McCarthy about that entire time. I mean, you have what's his name, Dan Quinn, who comes in. He was the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks during the Legion of Boom era. Mm-hmm. He goes to Atlanta, and Atlanta has a stout defense that entire time he's there. He had a stout defense the entire time he was there. He goes to Dallas last year, and they had an impressive defense where they could force turnovers. Mm-hmm. They get more pieces, and they now have one of the best defenses in the league. So I don't want to say that's Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy's just there for the ride. He has
he's also adapted to his quarterback being gone and has put Cooper Rush in situations where he can succeed, which I feel like shows. I feel like it shows cohesion as a whole of like the whole team, where like the quarterback could leave and things could just keep kind of moving and they could keep winning games.
I guess, but no, Mike McCarthy is. I would take all of the NFC East coaches except Ron Rivera over Mike McCarthy.
All right, so we have to take a break. When we're back, we'll be previewing the NBA season, which starts on Tuesday. This has been 90.7 The Capstone.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
And we are back with this team section. This is 90.7, The Capstone. My name is Brady and I'm here with Connor Rolls. And the NBA season is finally back. It is coming next Tuesday. Everybody put it in your calendars. Celtics, Sixers, Yay! First game of the season. And then we get the Warriors, Lakers after that.
I mean, it's a great time of year.
It's been a long summer. It's been a long time since the NBA has been back. And I, for one, am beyond excited to see all my favorite players come back in action. There's been lots of change. I feel like it's offseason, lots of drama going into it. Mm-hmm. But we are going to be trying to predict the NBA awards for the season, which is always, I feel like, an impossible task to do, but we're going to do it anyways.
Let's give it a try.
We're going to do it anyways. So let's just get right into it. The MVP award, Connor. What you thinking over there?
Before I talk about these awards, I want to give a shout out to Philadelphia sports. We are back on top, baby. You got the Eagles 5-0. You got the Sixers, who just made an amazing adjustment to their roster, and they are looking for a championship run. And the Phillies with a win on Friday night to make it 2-1 in the NLDS. We are back. Okay, but let's get back on topic. MVP for the NBA season. I think Jokic is going to have a good year, but voter fatigue is going to get him.
You can't like lose in the first round, like, or was it last year after being a back-to-back MVP, and then win it for a third time. I'm sorry, there's no way they're going to give him a third one.
But I would love to say Joel Embiid, but I don't think he'll have the season he had last year because he has all that help this year.
I think also part of it is the Sixers might dial him back a little bit because of that injury, the injury problems, and I feel like you need Embiid healthy in the playoffs for that to happen. So you kind of have to make him play a little bit less of the regular season.
So I am choosing someone who is entering their prime, who's very young, and who is a stone cold killer. Give me Luka Doncic as my MVP. If he can stay healthy.
I got some thoughts about that. I feel like the West is so loaded.
That's why if he can perform and get his team up there, he will win MVP.
I find it hard to see. I can't see the Mavericks breaking a top 5 seed in the West.
We didn't expect the Cavs to be as good as we did last year.
The Cavs also didn't make the playoffs last year,
but they were a lot better.
They were better in the next spot, but I feel like you saw Jalen Brunson won the Mavericks a playoff game.
That is true.
They literally carried them for that Jazz series until Luke came back. He's gone. You replace him with Christian Wood, who isn't also they lost ball handling. They replaced him with a kind of stretch 5-ish who can't really play defense very well, who's going to come off the bench. So I feel like they lost a lot there, and the team's not better than last year.
But you did get Jaden Hardy, who looked like the guy in the G League. Summer League. Summer League. Pardon me. But also, preseason and some clips that came out during practice, he looks like he's the real deal. So if he can be what they expected him to be before, like this whole G League Ignite thing, coming out of high school, he could really set that team up for success. And you just look at it. I mean, you got Luka, you got Jaden Hardy, you got Spencer Dinwiddie, you can put Dorian Finney-Smith and Christian Wood, that's your 5, with Reggie Bullock, who was not great against the Warriors, but he is a known shooter.
He can shoot the ball.
I think they have a really good shot at making a little run, like they did in the bubble.
See, my thoughts about that is just where Luka is, he's already been established for putting up crazy numbers. So if he puts up crazy numbers, it's not going to be that outlandish. Like it's going to be kind of like the same thing Luka's done. So I feel like the only way for him to get into that MVP conversation is to be a top seed in the West, and I just think that the West is just too good. There's just too many good teams for him to be this. That's how I talked myself out of that award.
Okay, so what's your MVP?
I'm staying in the West. I'm going with another young superstar who's been balling in the preseason, Ja Morant.
No way.
Ja Morant. I really like what I've seen from last year. That team is so young. They have been growing together as a whole. And I just think that a lot of people have been overlooking this team kind of going into the season. For some reason, I feel like people are saying that they could be like a play-in or a 6 seed and not really understanding that last year they were the literal 2 seed in the West. So I feel like they were a 2 seed. It's a young team. They're always going to get better. I like what I've seen from Ja Morant in the preseason, not just because he's playing well, but because he's playing so hard in the preseason. I feel like it shows that he just loves to hoop. And that's what leaders do. The entire Summer League, Ja Morant was showing up for the young guys in the Summer League. He was cheering on his team. He's out in the preseason, giving his all hooping. I think he has shown great leadership. And I think the Grizzlies are going to prove people wrong and be a top 3 seed in the West.
Okay, so don't get me wrong. I love Ja Morant. I think he's a really good basketball player. Yes, athleticism plays a big part, but I do agree he has some parts to his game that are really great. Like his playmaking, I think, is really good. His athleticism does most of it for him. People doesn't think he can shoot the ball. I think he can on a consistent basis, not like a crazy knockdown shooter, but if you need him to hit a shot, he will.
It's more of if you off him, he can normally make it. Like it's not. I wouldn't want Ja Morant to shoot contested shots from 3 all the time. But if he's wide open, like sure, Ja Morant, you take that shot and you make the defense kind of D up on you a little bit because the problem is the defense has to sag on him because of how explosive he is in getting to the rim.
But the only problem I have with that pick, he uses his athleticism so much, he is extremely prone to injuries. You saw it last year when he was out. The Grizzlies did better with him out than they did with him in. which is also just like to show how good and close that Grizzlies locker room is. But like a stat like that, it doesn't really seem that valuable. But even though we all know he is.
I think it's just a compliment to Desmond Bane. I think Desmond Bane
is that guy.
I think that's why. I think that stat gets kind of overhyped because people think that when John Morant's gone, there's just like no one on the team left and like no one can play well. When like, hey, Desmond Bane is like a legit 2 and he can play basketball well. So I feel like people kind of like overhype that stat a little bit in my mind because just him being gone and Desmond Bane like stepping up into that role, I think isn't that big of a deal because like obviously I think Desmond Bane's talented enough. Whereas you ask him to be the one on like certain nights, he can play that well.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about Defensive Player of the Year. Who do you have?
I don't love this pick, but I'm going with Rudy Gobert. And it's not that I don't think it's going to happen. It's that I just kind of don't like him as a player that much. But I think he's in a situation where he can have a very convincing argument to be Defensive Player of the Year because he's switching teams. So it's kind of like because always with the Jazz, it's always been like Rudy Gobert and like the advanced stats have shown like how good he makes his team with defense on and off the court and all that. So I feel like if he switches teams to Timberwolves, a team that wasn't good defensively last year at all, and then converts that team into a good defensive team, to me that's like a very convincing argument for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, I never agree with him getting Defensive Player of the Year because yes, he can block shots. But other than that, he can't defend. I mean, anytime Utah Jazz is in the playoffs, they get exposed because they play small ball and bring Rudy Gobert out to the perimeter.
People say this all the time.
They pick them apart.
But the bigger problem with that is that no one else on the Jazz can guard on the perimeter. Because if Rudy Gobert has to guard on the perimeter, but then all of a sudden you have like Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell just getting like their ankles broken, and then the guy's going wide open to the rim. Rudy Gobert obviously isn't going to be able to help as fast to get into the paint. So part of the problem was that the perimeter defense was just so abysmal.
Who's gonna play perimeter defense for the Timberwolves? D'Angelo Russell is Anthony Edwards,
D'Angelo Russell,
Kyle Anderson.
D'Angelo Russell is an underrated defender. He can run point on that defense for sure, and he's a great communicator back there. Ant has the athletic ability to be a great defender, and if they can get him to buy in, which I think they can, he can be a good defender for that team as well.
Cat though.
Cat, I mean, when you ask Cat to defend 5, it's obviously gonna be way worse. But when you switch him to the 4, Cat can definitely kind of like hide a little bit better at the 4.
Okay, so my Defensive Player of the Year pick, it really depends if he can get his offensive game down. But I have Matisse Thybulle. He has been a great defender throughout his entire NBA career.
For sure,
he shuts down people's best players. But the problem is,
they can't play him.
They can't play him because he can't play a lick of offense. So
he can't shoot the ball very well.
If he can get his offensive game down, there's no question that he could possibly be Defensive Player of the Year.
I agree with that take for sure. And I like the way you talked about that because the Sixers definitely were put in situations a lot of time where they kind of couldn't keep him on the court because while he was so great defensively, they get down the offensive end and he was just kind of being left open. Which, like, in the modern NBA, you can't have a player who's just, like, left open. Because there's certainly players who can't shoot, but you need to be able to do something really well on the offensive end, which he just hasn't figured out.
Yeah. We look at his season last year. During the regular season, he shot 31% from 3. And in the postseason, he shot 28. So
it's just, you can't put that on the court, sadly.
If he can definitely upgrade his offense, at least just be able to shoot the ball, that's Defensive Player of the Year.
Caliber.
He's
at that
caliber
level, for sure. So then Rookie of the Year. This draft class coming in, it's kind of been I think it's a hyped up draft class for sure.
Oh, most definitely.
The loss of Chet obviously kind of makes it a little less competitive, which obviously we would love to see Chet on the court. So
yeah, we don't wish injury upon anybody, but to be honest, I don't think he was gonna be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. He's just too small.
So then who you thinking?
My pick is my boy from back home, from Sandy Creek High School, Jabari Smith Jr. I mean, let's just look at it. His defense, it's probably the best defense out of this draft class. He can rebound well. Summer League, he did not look like he had a good shot. It was really flat. It just didn't look like himself. But you look his first game back from preseason, he hit 5 threes.
Way better.
So it looks like he shook off the nerves a little bit. His offensive game looked nasty. I think he needs to work on his dribbling just a little bit
I
more.
was gonna say the weakest part of his game is definitely the handle, which I
But-
feel like can come.
Yeah, I mean, if you get him with the playmaker like a point guard or whatever, he will be there. And I think he is the most NBA ready prospect.
I see him as like the Andrew Wiggins role, kind of like I feel like you could kind of put him in that role where it's like you're asking him to play defense, kind of shoot the ball when he can, but he definitely needs to work on his handle and getting to the rim.
Yeah.
In that sense, he's gonna ask a lot of his point guards to create for him. I went with Jaden Ivey for the Pistons. I think the duo of Ivy and Cunningham, I really like that explosive duo a lot.
Mhm.
I think that in the future they're going to grow together, and I think that this season, Jaden Ivey, if you look at his clips from Purdue, he is one of the most insane athletic finishers at the rim that you'll ever see for like his size. Like he goes in there and just does these insane finishes.
Yeah, I think he's a John Morant 2.0. His shot isn't quite there, but I think he's as athletic.
For sure. I mean, he is a freak athlete. He's got that like kind of Russell Westbrook in him a little bit, where he can rebound the ball, and then all of a sudden he's beat everyone up the court and is dunking on someone's head. So that's why I kind of went with him for my rookie of the year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So let's move on to let's see, most improved player of the year.
This is a hard one to predict. I feel like it's kind of a gamble because you don't really know
Yeah.
who's getting minutes where and all that. Who'd you go with?
So he had to improve to get defensive player of the year. So I think Matisse Thybulle will
We're
win
doubling
most
down.
improved. I mean, you talk about there was an interview with Daryl Morey earlier this year, and he was asked, "Who do you think will be the most important key to this team?"
Mhm.
And he said Matisse Thybulle. So, like I said, if he can get his offensive game down and be able to shoot the ball, play a little bit of offense, just enough to stay on the floor, and he can bring that defensive to the table, I think he will win most improved player.
Matisse is like kind of like a Morey. I can see why Morey kind of attaches himself to Matisse a little bit because Morey loves those guys who can kind of switch on everyone
Mhm.
and on defensively because I feel like if you can switch on everyone, that's kind of why the Celtics were so good last year defensively, that ability. So Matisse brings that defensively, and Morey really, I feel like, has bought into Matisse a lot and trying to get that offensive game up to par because he would love to see him on the court.
Yeah.
I went with Anthony Simons of the Portland Trailblazers. I think last year we saw it for like a month that he could play at a high level, which obviously isn't that big of a sample size.
Yeah.
So going into this year, there's still, I feel like, a lot of question marks, but I could see this guy being an all-star. I really could. Last year, I think in a certain stretch, he was shooting, I want to say like 43% from three on, I think it was like 7.5 attempts per game. So he was shooting at a high volume on a high percentage.
Yeah.
Which I really love that. And I think him playing alongside Dame will only allow for him to get better shots for the Portland Trailblazers. So that's why I kind of think that he's going to step into this big role. Because a lot of people were saying that the Jeremy Grant was going to kind of be the two for the Blazers this year. When I think that Simons will be the two next to Dame. And then Grant's going to be kind of this like defender / finisher for them.
Yeah, I could see Anthony doing something. I mean, it's crazy to think he was drafted in 2018 and he's only 23 years old.
I know he's been in the system. He's been in their system for a long time now.
So I think it is possible. So let's move on to sixth man of the year.
I'm going Malcolm Brogdon
Okay.
of the Celtics. He's in preseason. I really love the playmaking he brings. The Celtics obviously were missing an extra ball handler in the finals last year, and we're in like great need of that. I think he's had multiple games with kind of like 7+ assists, which I love to see. He's not forcing his shot at all. Like in the Pacers, I feel like there were certain times where he felt like he had to force his shot because that team was obviously not that talented. But with this team, he's already accepting this role of the sixth man, which I love to see. And he's just kind of going out there and making the offense flow way better for the Celtics.
Yeah, it's good to see the Celtics get a real point guard and not have Marcus Smart out there running point the entire time.
I wasn't saying Marcus Smart is not a real point guard. I was simply saying that they need more playmaking.
I was saying Marcus
I know you were
Smart's not
trying
a
to
real
take a
point
shot,
guard.
my man Smart there. But I'm going to stand up for him here. The problem was not Smart. The problem was they needed more players who could play make.
I can see that happening, but my pick, it comes as a surprise because I am one of the biggest haters of this guy. But Russell Westbrook, I think he could win sixth man of the year because he is going to be benched. And if he plays the way he plays with nobodies that the Lakers have, I think there's a possibility he could put up empty stats, and that might get him Sixth Man of the Year.
I think there's a possibility for that. That's like, I feel like that's like a Lakers like fever dream.
Yeah.
That like in the best world possible, Russell Westbrook accepts this role as sixth man and flourishes in that spot. I find it really hard to believe that Russell Westbrook is going to just accept that role of sixth man, and that the Lakers are committed to Russell Westbrook. I don't think come after the All-Star break, Russell Westbrook is still a Laker. So that's why I'm kind of holding back on him being a sixth man.
Yeah, there's either two ways this ends. This either ends with the Lakers winning the championship and Russell Westbrook being what everyone hoped, or Westbrook's gone by the second month of the NBA season and the Lakers season's over. So there's no in between. It's hit or miss.
Mm-hmm. So then the final award, Coach of the Year. What you thinking with?
I have JB Bickerstaff as my Coach of the Year for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You look at what they did last year with up-and-coming Darius Garland, Evan Mobley his rookie year, Jarrett Allen, Isaac Okoro. I mean, Ricky Rubio for some of the year. They really put it together. They make a trade. They get rid of Lauri Markkanen, who was a subpar defender.
Yeah.
Colin Sexton, who was injured for most of the year, and a lot of picks and a lot of other stuff to get Donovan Mitchell. I think if they put this together, this team will be very, very scary, and Bickerstaff has a chance to make an argument for Coach of the Year.
I see where you're going with that. I feel like for Coach of the Year especially, you have to be, I feel like, one of the top two seeds of your division. And just the Cavs with the East, I think Celtics, Sixers, Bucks, like I think those three teams, and even the Nets, I thought you could say.
No, I'm not. I would never give it to Steve Nash.
I know you went. No, I'm not saying. I'm saying just as a team could be above.
Okay.
We'll probably be above. So let's say the Cavs are a 5 seed. I find it hard to give the Coach of the Year to 5 seeds. That's why I'm going with the Celtics, Joe Mazzulla. I feel like he's stepping into a role that is very uncommon to kind of like step in like days before preseason starts and having to accept this role as like the new coach of this team. He's obviously been in this system for a while now, but I really like what he's done. He's kind of adapting the players are saying he wants them to play faster on offense, which I love to see. In preseason, the Celtics, they immediately rebound the ball and they push the floor so fast. It's kind of given that 7 seconds or less offense vibe, which I really like to see. And I think that because the Celtics were obviously lacking in playmaking, like I said earlier, and kind of one of like the natural like how you could solve that is just playing faster. Because if you're not just like sitting in the half court offense, you don't need players to kind of accept this like ball handling and playmaking role as much as if you just push the floor like he's asked them to do, which I really love.
I do agree. I would love for that to happen, but you look at Jason Tatum and he looks like an iso ball player, so I am a little skeptical of how that will work.
I believe in them. I believe in them. I'm a bit of a homer, but I believe in them. Sadly, we are out of time tonight. This has been the student section on 90.7 The Capstone. I hope you all have a great weekend. Roll Tide.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.